Jake Morrison felt cold metal against his back before he felt anything else. His head pounded like someone had hit him with a hammer. Everything was fuzzy and wrong. The last thing he remembered was walking patrol in Afghanistan with his unit. Now he was lying on something hard and smooth. He tried to move but couldn't. Thick straps held his arms and legs down tight. Panic shot through him as he opened his eyes. This wasn't any place he knew. The ceiling above him glowed with soft blue light that seemed to move and pulse. Strange symbols floated in the air like holograms. The walls curved in ways that hurt to look at. Everything smelled like chemicals and something else he couldn't name. Jake turned his head as much as the restraints allowed. He wasn't alone. Dozens of other people were strapped to tables just like his. Some were awake and struggling. Others lay still. A woman nearby was crying softly. A man was shouting in a language Jake didn't understand. All of them were human. Movement caught his eye. Something tall walked between the tables. Jake's blood went cold when he got a good look at it. The thing stood 8 feet tall on thin legs that bent the wrong way. Its body was covered in dark, shiny skin that looked like an insect's shell. 4 arms moved with quick, jerky motions. Its head was the worst part, huge compound eyes like a fly's and a mouth full of clicking parts. It wasn't alone. More of these creatures moved around the room. They carried devices that hummed and glowed. They pointed these tools at the humans and watched screens that showed numbers and shapes. Jake forced himself to stay calm. 20 years in the Marines had taught him to think even when scared. These things had taken humans from Earth somehow. But why? What did they want? One of the aliens came closer to his table. It held a device that looked like a metal wand. Blue light came from the tip and swept over Jake's body. The creature's compound eyes studied a screen that floated next to it. The alien made clicking sounds at another one across the room. They seemed to be talking. Jake listened carefully but couldn't make sense of it. The sounds were too strange, like insects mixed with machinery. The creature pressed buttons on its device. The blue light got brighter and started to hurt. Jake gritted his teeth and didn't make a sound. He wouldn't give these things the satisfaction. Other humans weren't so quiet. Someone screamed as another alien did something with a different tool. Jake saw metal arms come down from the ceiling and start taking blood from a man 2 tables over. These things were experimenting on people like they were lab rats. Jake studied everything around him while pretending to be more hurt than he was. The aliens moved like they owned the place. They didn't seem worried about the humans fighting back. Why would they be? The people were all tied down and helpless. Or so they thought. Jake noticed something important. The aliens had no weapons. No guards with guns, no armor. They acted like doctors in a hospital, not like soldiers who expected trouble. That was their first mistake. The restraints holding Jake were strong, but simple. They were made for people who would struggle in panic, not someone trained to escape. Jake had been taught how to get out of ropes, handcuffs, and chains. These straps worked differently, but the idea was the same. The alien studying Jake moved to check on another human. This was Jake's chance. He relaxed his left hand completely and started working his thumb. It hurt, but he could dislocate it if he had to. His drill instructor had shown him this trick years ago. Sometimes you have to hurt yourself a little, to avoid getting hurt a lot, the man had said. Jake bit down hard and popped his thumb out of joint. Pain shot up his arm, but the hand was smaller now. He pulled and twisted until it slipped free of the strap. The alien was still busy with another table. Jake quickly freed his other hand, then his feet. His thumb throbbed, but he ignored it. He'd had worse injuries in combat. Now came the hard part. Jake sat up slowly and looked around. The room was huge, full of tables and equipment. Too many aliens to fight all at once. But he didn't need to fight them all. He just needed to cause enough trouble to help the others. The alien that had been examining him started to turn around. Jake moved fast. He grabbed the creature from behind and put it in a chokehold. The alien made horrible clicking sounds and struggled with all 4 arms. Its skin felt like touching a beetle. Jake squeezed harder. The creature's legs kicked and its arms flailed. One hand held the scanning device it had been using. Jake grabbed it and twisted the alien's arm until it let go. Other aliens noticed the fight and started making loud clicking alarms. But they moved slow, like they didn't know what to do. They had never dealt with a human fighting back. Jake threw the alien he was holding into a table full of equipment. Metal tools crashed to the floor. He looked at the device in his hand. It had buttons and a screen. The tip still glowed blue. Another alien rushed at him. Jake pointed the device at it and pressed the biggest button. A beam of bright energy shot out and hit the creature center mass. It made a shrieking sound and fell backward. Smoke came from a hole in its chest, so their own tools could hurt them. Good to know. Alarms started wailing throughout the facility. Lights flashed red and blue. The remaining aliens in the room backed away from Jake, clicking frantically at each other. Jake didn't waste time. He ran to the nearest human, a woman with short blonde hair who looked like she might be military. She was awake and staring at him with wide eyes. "Stay calm," Jake said, as he used the alien device to cut through her restraints. "I'm going to get you out of here." The woman sat up and rubbed her wrists. "Who are you?" "Marine Sergeant Jake Morrison." "What's your name?" "Air Force Captain Lisa Chang." She looked around at the chaos Jake had started. "How did you do that?" "Training," Jake said, moving to free the next person. "These things aren't soldiers. They're just scientists who bit off more than they can chew." More alarms joined the first ones. Jake could hear clicking sounds coming from other parts of the facility. The aliens were calling for help. Jake smiled grimly as he freed another human. Let them call. They were about to learn what happened when you messed with the wrong species. Jake moved fast from table to table, cutting restraints with the alien weapon. The device worked like a laser cutter, slicing through the metal straps easily. Each person he freed looked around in shock and fear. "Listen up," Jake said to the growing group of humans. "We're on some kind of alien ship. These things have been experimenting on us. Right now they're confused and scared. That won't last long." Lisa Chang stood beside him, checking on the people as Jake freed them. She had the bearing of someone used to command. That was good. Jake would need help organizing everyone. "How many of us are there?" asked a big man with calloused hands. He looked like a construction worker or mechanic. "Maybe 40 in this room," Jake replied, freeing a teenage boy who couldn't stop shaking. "Could be more in other parts of this place." The aliens had retreated to the far end of the room. They clustered together, clicking rapidly at devices they held. Jake could see them, looking at screens and pressing buttons. Calling for backup, probably. "We need to move," Jake said. "Find weapons, secure this area, then look for others." "Weapons from what?" asked a woman with a Spanish accent. She wore scrubs like a nurse or doctor. "Those energy guns?" Jake nodded, toward the alien equipment scattered around the room. "Anything that shoots energy can be a weapon if you know which buttons to push. Plus, look around. This whole place is full of tools and chemicals. We just have to think like humans instead of lab rats." A man in his 50s stepped forward. His clothes were torn, but he moved with confidence. "I'm Tony Rodriguez, Army medic. I can help with injuries and maybe figure out what some of these medical devices do." "Good. Lisa, you're Air Force. Can you figure out their computer systems?" Lisa nodded, walking toward a wall covered in floating screens. "Maybe. These interfaces look complex but logical. Give me a few minutes." Jake turned to the big man who had spoken earlier. "You look like you work with your hands. What's your name?" "Pete Williams. I run heavy machinery at a construction site. Or did, before I ended up here. Can you look at their equipment? See if any of it can be turned into weapons or tools we can use?" Pete grinned. "You bet. Machines are machines, even alien ones." The teenage boy Jake had freed was still shaking. A middle-aged woman put her arm around him. "I'm Karen White," she said. "I teach high school science. Maybe I can help figure out what chemicals they have here." Jake felt a spark of hope. These people had useful skills. The aliens might be advanced, but they had made a huge mistake. They had grabbed humans from all walks of life without understanding what that meant. "All right, everyone pair up," Jake ordered. "Nobody works alone. If you see more aliens coming, yell loud. We stick together until we know what we're dealing with." The freed humans spread out across the lab. Jake kept the alien energy weapon and moved toward the wall where the creatures were still clustered. He wanted to see what they were so worried about. The aliens noticed him coming and clicked even faster. One held up a device that showed Jake's face on a screen. Another showed images of Earth. They were definitely calling for help and sharing information about humans. Jake raised the EI weapon. The aliens scrambled backward, bumping into each other. Their compound eyes tracked the device in Jake's hands. They knew what it could do. "That's right," Jake said quietly. "Your own toys work just fine against you." Behind him, he heard Pete Williams laughing. "Hey, Jake, come look at this thing. I think I know what it does." Jake backed away from the aliens, keeping the weapon pointed at them. Pete stood next to a large machine with cables running into the floor and ceiling. "It's some kind of power control system," Pete explained. "See these gauges? They're monitoring energy flow throughout the facility. And this big lever here, I bet it controls the main power to this section. What happens if we shut it off? Well, the lights would go out. Life support might stop. And all their fancy equipment would quit working." Jake looked around the lab. Most of the humans were busy exploring and learning. Tony Rodriguez was studying medical equipment with Karen White. Lisa Chang had her hands on some kind of control panel, watching symbols flow across screens. "Not yet," Jake decided. "We need to understand more first. But keep that in mind." A woman's voice called out from across the room. "I found something." Everyone turned. A lady in business clothes stood next to what looked like a window, but instead of glass, it showed a view of space with Earth hanging in the distance like a blue marble. "We're in orbit," she said. Her voice shook a little. "They took us off the planet." Jake walked over to look. Earth was there, beautiful and far away. No wonder he didn't remember how he got here. The aliens must have some way to grab people without being seen. "How many ships like this are there?" wondered Lisa Chang. As if answering her question, the view shifted. Several other large objects floated near them in space. They looked similar to whatever vessel they were on now. "More than one," Jake said grimly. "This is bigger than just us." Tony Rodriguez came over with a strange device in his hands. "I figured out what this thing does. It translates languages. Been listening to those aliens click at each other." "What are they saying?" "They're scared out of their minds. Keep talking about unprecedented resistance and dangerous specimens. They've called for security teams from other parts of the ship." Karen White had been quiet, studying some containers of liquid. Now she spoke up with excitement. "These chemicals they're using? I recognize some of them. This one here is basically industrial solvent. And this green stuff, it's highly acidic." "Meaning what?" "Meaning we can make things that go boom or burn through metal. I just need some basic lab equipment." Jake felt that spark of hope grow stronger. These aliens thought they were so smart. They had advanced technology and superior numbers. But they didn't understand the most important thing about humans. Humans didn't just adapt to their environment. They changed it. "Security teams are coming," Tony translated as the alien clicking got more urgent. "They're bringing containment tools and pacification devices." "How long do we have?" "Not sure, but they keep mentioning immediate response protocols." Jake looked around at his people. 40 humans with different skills, trapped in an alien lab billions of miles from home. Against them were creatures with advanced technology and the advantage of knowing their own ship. But Jake had been in bad situations before. In Iraq, his unit had been surrounded by enemies with better weapons and more men. They had survived by being smarter, faster, and more determined. These aliens were about to learn that taking humans prisoner was easy. Keeping them prisoner was something else entirely. "Listen up," Jake called out. "Company's coming. Pete, I want you to map out every power control you can find. Karen, start mixing whatever you can into explosives or weapons. Tony, keep listening to those aliens. Lisa, see if you can figure out how to open doors or control security systems. He looked at each person in turn. They were scared, but ready to fight. That was all he needed. These things made a mistake, Jake continued. They thought we were just animals to be studied. They're about to find out what happens when you corner 40 humans who have nothing left to lose. Outside the lab, Jake could hear new sounds. Heavy footsteps and mechanical humming. The security teams were coming. Jake smiled and checked the alien weapon in his hands. Let them come. The first security team came through the main door like they owned the place. 3 aliens in what looked like armor, carrying weapons that hummed with energy. They moved slow and careful, like they had all the time in the world. That was their second mistake. Jake had positioned his people around the lab like he was setting up an ambush in Afghanistan. Karen White crouched behind a table with bottles of her homemade acid bombs. Pete Williams waited by the power controls. Tony Rodriguez hid near the communication equipment, still listening to alien chatter. The security aliens clicked at the cowering researchers. They seemed to be getting a report on what happened. Their weapons swept the room looking for threats. They didn't see the humans hiding until it was too late. Jake gave a hand signal. Karen threw her first acid bomb at the lead alien's feet. The container shattered and green liquid splashed everywhere. The alien's armor started smoking and dissolving. It made horrible shrieking sounds. Pete pulled his lever. The lights went out. In the darkness, Jake opened fire with the energy weapon he had taken. Blue bolts lit up the room like lightning. The security aliens spun around, confused and blinded. Lisa Chang had found the door controls. She sealed the entrance, trapping the security team inside with 40 angry humans. It was over in less than 2 minutes. Jake stood over the disabled aliens, breathing hard. His people had fought like soldiers. No panic, no hesitation. They had worked together like a trained unit. Check their equipment, Jake ordered. Take anything useful. The security aliens carried better weapons than the researchers had. Real, military gear designed for fighting. Jake handed them out to people who looked like they knew how to use them. Tony, what are the other aliens saying now? Tony pressed the translation device to his ear. His face went pale. They're panicking, calling this an extinction-level event. They've never seen anything like organized human resistance. Good. Let's give them more to worry about. Karen White had been examining the alien armor. This stuff isn't that advanced, she said. It's strong against energy weapons, but acid eats right through it. And look at this. She pointed to breathing equipment, built into the helmet. They need this to survive in their own atmosphere. Without it, they can't function. Jake smiled. So if we damage their life support, they're helpless. Exactly. And I can make acid that specifically targets their breathing systems. Pete Williams had been studying the door Jake's team came through. I figured out their security system, he announced. It's all electronic locks tied to a central computer. If we can get Lisa into their main system, we can control the whole ship. Lisa looked up from the alien computer she had been working on. I'm starting to understand their interface. It's actually pretty simple once you figure out the logic. But I need access to a higher-level terminal. Where would that be? Tony listened to more alien chatter. They're talking about a control center. Sounds like it's a few levels up from here. Jake looked at his team. They were no longer scared prisoners. They were soldiers with a mission. The aliens had given them everything they needed to fight back. Weapons, knowledge, and most importantly, motivation. We're going to take this ship, Jake announced. Level by level, room by room. But first we need to find the other humans they've captured. The translation device crackled with more alien communication. Tony's eyes widened. There are hundreds of humans on this ship, maybe thousands, spread out across different lab sections. Then, we free them all. Jake organized his people into teams. Lisa and Pete would work on taking control of ship systems. Karen and Tony would make weapons and gather intelligence. Jake would lead assault teams to rescue other humans. They cut through the lab's back wall using alien tools. The metal peeled away like paper under their energy cutters. Beyond was a corridor that curved with the shape of the ship. More aliens rushed toward the sound of cutting. Jake's team was ready for them. The corridor became a shooting gallery. Aliens had never faced guerrilla warfare. They bunched up in groups and moved predictably. Jake's people spread out and used cover. They picked off the aliens one by one. "This is too easy," muttered one of the rescued humans, a man who said he had been a police officer. "They're not warriors," Jake replied, taking down another alien with precise shots. "They're scientists and technicians. They never expected their lab rats to bite back." The team moved deeper into the ship. They found more laboratory sections, each filled with human prisoners. Jake's force grew with every room they cleared. A woman named Helen Turner had been a nurse before her capture. She organized the newly freed humans, treating injuries and identifying people with useful skills. A man called Rick Davis turned out to be a demolitions expert. He and Karen started making bigger explosives using alien chemicals and power sources. Each new person added to their capabilities. The aliens had accidentally gathered a cross-section of human society. Engineers, soldiers, doctors, mechanics, teachers. Every skill they needed was represented. Lisa finally accessed a major computer terminal. "I'm in their main system," she called out. "I can see the whole ship layout. There are 12 laboratory sections. We've cleared 3. "What about their command center?" "It's heavily protected. Lots of security between us and them, but Jake, there's something else. I can see other ships in their fleet. This isn't just about us anymore." Jake looked at the tactical display Lisa had brought up. Dozens of alien vessels surrounded Earth, each one probably full of human prisoners. "They're not just studying us," Jake realized. "This is an invasion. They're taking people to figure out how to conquer Earth." The thought made him angry. These creatures had started something they couldn't finish. They wanted to know what made humans dangerous. He would show them. "Change of plans," Jake announced to his growing army. "We're not just escaping, we're taking this entire ship. And then we're going to use it to warn Earth and attack the other vessels." A cheer went up from the humans around him. They were no longer prisoners fighting for survival. They were Earth's first line of defense against an alien invasion. The aliens had made their biggest mistake yet. They had given humanity a common enemy and a reason to unite. Every person Jake freed became another soldier in the fight. Tony intercepted more alien communications. "They're evacuating non-essential personnel from our section. The ship's commander is requesting reinforcements from the fleet." "Let them call for help," Jake said. "The more aliens they send at us, the more weapons we'll capture." He looked around at the faces of his people. Men and women from every walk of life united by determination and righteous anger. The aliens thought they were studying human nature in controlled conditions. Instead, they had created the perfect environment for humans to do what they did best: adapt, overcome, and fight back against impossible odds. Jake raised his weapon and pointed toward the ship's command center. "Let's go teach these things while you don't mess with Earth." Jake's army had grown to over 200 humans as they fought their way through the ship. Each cleared section brought new people with different skills. The aliens had been thorough in their kidnapping. They had taken doctors, engineers, farmers, students, and soldiers from every continent on Earth. Now those diverse skills worked against them. Rick Davis and Karen White had turned 3 laboratory sections into weapon factories. They used alien chemicals and power cells to make explosives that could punch through the ship's thick walls. Their acid bombs could dissolve alien armor in seconds. Lisa Chang had taken over an entire computer center. Banks of alien screens showed her everything happening on the ship. She controlled doors, lights, and life support systems. The aliens were trapped in their own vessel. "They're sealing off the command center," Lisa reported. "Thick blast doors, independent power supply. They're scared." Jake studied the tactical display. The alien command section was 5 levels above them, protected by multiple security barriers. Getting there would mean fighting through the ship's best defenses. "What about the other vessels?" Jake asked. Lisa switched views to show the alien fleet surrounding Earth. 47 ships total. They're staying in formation, but some are moving closer to the planet. "They're planning to start the invasion," realized Helen Turner, who had become Jake's second in command. We've disrupted their research schedule. Tony Rodriguez looked up from his translation equipment. The aliens are calling us an anomalous resistance pattern. They're requesting data from other ships about human behavior. Jake smiled grimly. Let's give them some data they won't forget. He organized his people into specialized teams. Combat. Engineers led by Pete Williams would clear paths through the ship's defenses. Medical teams under Helen Turner would treat wounded and keep everyone fighting. Lisa's computer specialists would maintain control of ship systems. Jake led the main assault force toward the command center. The aliens had learned from their earlier defeats. They didn't bunch up in corridors anymore. They used remote weapons and tried to fight from protected positions. But they still moved like scientists, not soldiers. Rick Davis solved the problem of the blast doors by turning the aliens' own power systems against them. He rigged energy conduits to overload and explode. The first barrier disappeared in a ball of fire and melting metal. Behind it waited the ship's elite guards. These aliens were different from the researchers and basic security teams. They wore heavier armor and moved with military precision. Their weapons fired faster and hit harder, but they had never fought humans before. Jake's people used tactics no alien could predict. They crawled through air ducts that were too small for the tall aliens. They set traps using everyday items turned into weapons. They attacked from 6 directions at once. The elite guards were tough, but they fought like they had learned from textbooks. Humans fought like they were defending their families, because they were. They're requesting emergency evacuation, Tony translated. The ship's commander wants to abandon the vessel and transfer to another ship. Not happening, Jake said, ducking under energy blasts. Lisa, can you lock down their escape pods? Already done. Nobody leaves this ship without our permission. The battle moved level by level toward the command center. Jake's forces took heavy casualties, but they kept advancing. Every fallen human was replaced by 2 more freed from laboratories. Aliens were running out of troops while Jake's army kept growing. Karen White had developed new weapons using the ship's own systems. She could turn gravity generators into crushing traps. She could make life support systems pump out sleeping gas or poison. The aliens' advanced technology became humanity's advantage. Final barrier ahead, Pete Williams reported. This one's different. Some kind of energy field instead of solid doors. Jake examined the shimmering wall of light. Energy weapons bounced off harmlessly. Rick's explosives fizzled when they touched it. It's keyed to alien biology, Lisa said, studying readings from her computers. Only allows their species through. So, how do we get past it? Helen Turner had an idea. What if we don't go through it? What if we go around it? She pointed to air vents and power conduits that ran along the walls. The barrier only covers the main entrance, but ships need ventilation and power lines. Jake nodded. Classic thinking. The aliens made their defense too complex. Simple solutions work best. While Rick prepared charges to blast through the walls, Jake gathered his assault team. 20 of his best fighters, armed with the most powerful weapons they had captured. Behind them waited the rest of his army, nearly 400 humans ready to take control of an alien starship. The charges went off simultaneously. 3 holes opened in the walls around the energy barrier. Jake's teams poured through before the aliens could react. The command center was a vast spherical room filled with floating displays and control surfaces. Dozens of aliens worked at stations throughout the space. At the center sat the largest alien Jake had seen, wearing elaborate robes and speaking rapidly into communication devices. The ship's commander. Jake's team spread out and surrounded the aliens before they could organize resistance. Most of the command crew weren't fighters. They were navigation specialists and communication officers. Surrender, Jake called out in English, knowing the aliens had translation systems. Order your fleet to withdraw from Earth. The commander alien clicked and chittered angrily. Tony translated. He says humans are contaminated specimens that should be destroyed rather than studied. Wrong answer. Jake raised his weapon, but Helen Turner put a hand on his arm. Wait. We need them alive. They have information we need about their civilization. She was right. Killing the command crew would feel good, but it wouldn't help Earth in the long run. Lisa, can you take over their communication systems? Already working on it. Lisa's fingers flew over alien controls. I'm accessing their fleet network now. Jake kept his weapon trained on the commander, while his people secured the room. After months of being prisoners and test subjects, humans were finally in control. The view screens around the command center showed space outside the ship. Other alien vessels were moving closer to Earth, probably preparing to rescue this ship or destroy it to prevent contamination. They won't risk letting us reach Earth with their technology, Jake realized. We need to move fast. Tony intercepted communications from the alien fleet. They're arguing about what to do. Some want to rescue the research data. Others want to destroy this entire ship. How long before they decide? Not long. They're scared of what we might do with their technology. Jake looked around the command center. His people were learning to operate alien systems with typical human adaptability. Lisa had communications under control. Pete was figuring out navigation. Karen was studying their weapons systems. The aliens thought they were advanced and superior. They had made the same mistake that conquerors throughout history always made. They underestimated the people they tried to defeat. Set course for Earth, Jake ordered. Maximum speed. And Lisa? Yeah? Send a message to our planet. Tell them that humanity just captured its first alien warship. Jake smiled as Earth grew larger on the view screen. The aliens had wanted to study human behavior under stress. They were about to get a perfect demonstration of what happened when you gave humans something to fight for. The real war was just beginning. Jake stood on the bridge of the captured alien ship as Earth filled the main viewing screen. 3 days had passed since they took control of the vessel. 3 days of learning alien technology and preparing for what came next. Lisa Chang had become their expert on alien computers. She discovered files that made Jake's blood run cold. The aliens called themselves the Collective. They had conquered 47 different worlds using the same method. Study the inhabitants, find their weaknesses, then invade with overwhelming force. Earth was supposed to be number 48. Their research files are incredible, Lisa reported. They've been watching us for decades, taking people from war zones, disaster areas, anywhere they could grab humans without being noticed. Jake examined the data on his screen. The aliens had detailed files on human military tactics, psychology, and biology. They knew about weapons, governments, and population centers. They had been preparing for conquest for a long time, but they had made one critical error. They studied us like we were animals, Jake said. They never understood that humans fight differently when we're united. Helen Turner coordinated medical teams throughout the ship. They had saved most of the human prisoners, though some were too sick from alien experiments to recover quickly. The final count was over 800 people from every nation on Earth. We've got representation from everywhere, Helen reported. Scientists, soldiers, farmers, teachers, the aliens grabbed a perfect cross-section of humanity. Tony Rodriguez had spent days translating alien communications. What he found was disturbing. They're not just invaders, he told Jake. They're running from something. Their home regions of space are under attack by another species. They need new worlds to survive. So they're refugees who became conquerors? Exactly. And Earth isn't their final target. It's just a stepping stone. Rick Davis had been studying alien weapons technology. The good news is, their stuff isn't that much better than ours, he said. More advanced, sure, but not magic. Our weapons can hurt them just fine. Karen White had made an even more important discovery. Their biology is completely different from ours, she explained. They can't eat our food, can't breathe our air without equipment, and they're vulnerable to Earth diseases. Meaning they can't actually live on Earth long term. They would need massive life support systems. The invasion was never about taking our planet. It was about destroying us so we couldn't interfere with their plans. Jake processed this information. The aliens weren't trying to steal Earth. They wanted to eliminate humanity as a potential threat. That made them even more dangerous. Pete Williams had figured out the ship's propulsion and navigation systems. "I can get us anywhere in the solar system," he announced. "But Jake, you need to see this." Pete showed Jake the alien fleet's battle plans. 46 ships remained in orbit around Earth. They were positioning themselves over major population centers: New York, London, Tokyo, Beijing, Mumbai. "They're going to hit our cities," Jake realized. "Kill as many people as possible before we can organize resistance." Lisa intercepted alien communications. "They're done waiting. The fleet commander has decided our ship is lost. They're starting the attack in 6 hours." Jake looked around the bridge at his people. 800 humans who had been prisoners were now the only thing standing between Earth and annihilation. The odds were impossible. He had faced impossible odds before. "Lisa, open a channel to Earth, all frequencies. I want everyone to hear this." Jake stood in front of the main communications array. Behind him, the alien fleet prepared for war. Below them, Earth turned slowly in space, beautiful and unaware of the danger. "This is Marine Sergeant Jake Morrison broadcasting from a captured alien warship. If you're receiving this message, Earth is under attack. An alien fleet of 46 vessels is preparing to destroy our major cities. This is not a drill, this is war." Jake paused, letting that sink in before continuing. "The aliens call themselves the Collective. They've conquered 47 worlds before ours. They study their enemies, find weaknesses, then attack. But they made a mistake with us. They studied humans as individuals, not as a species." On the screens around him, Jake could see the alien fleet beginning to move into attack positions. "We've learned their technology, we know their plans, and we're going to stop them. But we need help from everyone on Earth. Every military, every government, every person who can fight." Lisa had established contact with ground-based communications. Military commanders around the world were responding to Jake's message. The alien attack had unified Earth's nations instantly. "They're vulnerable to our weapons," Jake continued. "Their armor can be dissolved with strong acid. Their life support systems can be damaged. And they've never faced coordinated resistance before." Tony Rodriguez monitored alien communications. "The fleet is moving," he reported. "They're targeting North America first." Jake made his decision. "Lisa, take us to intercept. Full speed." "Jake, we're one ship against 46, that's suicide." "Maybe, but we're not trying to win. We're trying to buy time for Earth to prepare." Pete Williams engaged the ship's engines. The captured vessel accelerated toward the alien fleet. Jake's people took positions at weapon stations and prepared for battle. "Helen, get all non-combat personnel to protected areas. Tony, keep monitoring their communications. Lisa, target their command ship." Jake opened the channel to Earth one more time. "This is our message to any species that thinks humans are easy prey. We don't surrender, we don't submit, and we don't give up. Earth is our home, and we'll fight for it until our last breath." The alien fleet opened fire as Jake's ship approached. Energy beams lit up space like deadly fireworks. Jake's people fired back with weapons they had learned to use in 3 days. The battle was hopeless and heroic and human. Rick Davis had rigged the ship's power core to overload. If they were going down, they would take as many aliens with them as possible. Karen White released biological weapons into space, Earth bacteria that would contaminate alien life support systems. Pete Williams rammed their ship into the alien command vessel before the power core exploded. Jake's last thought as the ships died together in fire was that the aliens had finally gotten their data on human behavior under extreme stress. They just wouldn't live to use it. But below them, Earth had heard the warning. Military forces mobilized. Scientists studied the alien technology Jake's people had transmitted. The world united against a common threat. The Collective had conquered 47 worlds by dividing and studying their enemies. They had chosen the wrong planet for number 48. The surviving alien ships retreated as Earth's defenses came online. They had expected to face scattered, confused resistance. Instead, they met a unified planet that had learned their weaknesses. Jake Morrison and his 800 volunteers were gone, but their sacrifice had saved billions. The aliens had wanted to study human nature. In the end, they learned the most. Important lesson about humanity. We are stronger together than they ever imagined, and we never forget our heroes.